The last time we recorded, we'd just lost 3 points to a top four rival and come within 2 minutes of a third round FA Cup exit. Since then, we've secured a place in round four, and apparently there was a fairly decent goal in our defeat of a tricky Crystal Palace side. What difference a fortnight makes. This is your e-Spurs podcast.
He's already alluded to the fact that he needs to sell players before he can buy players. For me, I keep saying it, Berahino, if you're asking me personally, he's the striker that I want. I believe he ticks the boxes what we need. He's English, he's pacey, he's young, he's played with Kane before, he can play in a 4-4-2.
Dad took me there and I can remember Robbo scoring, and I don't think I saw my dad then until the penalty shootout had finished. It was the old standing on the shelf in those days. Dad take me there, getting there 4 hours before kick-off, trying to get a view, and after about 2 minutes of the game, you always got the bloke 6'2" standing straight in front of you. You thought, that's it now, I won't see any of the game.
I remember my first North London derby, 2006-7 season, or 5-6, 1 or 2. We were 2-1 down. We're in the 93rd minute. Steve Malbronk lays the ball off to Jermaine Genius, and the rest is history. I went mental.
Welcome to the show, guys. We will, of course, be talking about that fairly decent goal, I'm sure, during the course of the show. This is your e-Spurs podcast, your weekly fix of all things THFC. Don't forget, we want you guys out there to get involved in the show, as always. So if you like what you hear, there's multiple ways to stay in touch with all things e-Spurs. We're on Twitter, of course, at e_Spurs. Our Facebook page, should you want to give us a like on there, is e-Spurs page, all one word. And new for this season, you can get in touch with us on Google Plus and YouTube. So for all of the links for all e-Spurs platforms, just head to our website. The link for that is www.espurs.blogspot.co.uk. Tonight we'll look back at an FA Cup fourth round place secured at the second attempt. I'll be asking the team if they agree with Pochettino's assessment that our squad is adequate and that we don't need another striker. And we'll get your thoughts on this week's talking point, which was, would you rather Champions League football in our last season at White Hart Lane or an FA Cup win this season, which would be our first in 25 years? So that's sure to be a really interesting debate, I'm sure. But without further ado, let's introduce the team that are going to take you through all of that. It's Jason, John and Ricky. How you doing, fellas?
Very well, thanks, mate.
Very well, thanks, Andy, very well.
Brilliant stuff, lads. Great to have you on with us. But that's not all, because tonight we are once again joined by a familiar voice from a couple of weeks ago. I'm really pleased to say that from Harvard Spurs, we're once again joined by Andrew Pupolo. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you guys? Definitely excited for this. Great wins last week, so yeah, it's going to be fun. Absolutely.
It's nice to be on after a couple of great wins, isn't it, Andrew? And I take it you watched the game over there with the other members of the supporters club?
Yeah, on Wednesday I watched it, New York Spurs. It was my last day before coming back up to Boston for second semester, and they had a good group of around 30 for a Wednesday at 3 p.m., so that was very exciting. And the team played really well, so on Saturday I watched by myself. But that's okay.
Well, listen, all that matters is they got the win, and I just hope you're avoiding the snow over there, mate.
Yeah, Boston didn't get hit as hard as Washington, D.C. or New York, so we did get some snow, about 6 inches, but Boston's pretty well equipped for that, so there wasn't too much complications with it.
Brilliant stuff. Good to hear. Well, listen, Andrew, it's good to have you on with us again, buddy, and no doubt we'll be talking Spurs with you in just a moment. Tonight, we're going to be talking, of course, about the two games during the course of the last few weeks. I'm sure it's going to be a very positive show tonight, guys, so loads in store for you on the show tonight. Before we crack on, just some admin that I want to take you through. Don't forget you can head to our Twitter account at e_Spurs, where at the moment we've got a competition on there to win a 1981 FA Cup final replica shirt. Really good shirt to own. You can win that, you can get involved in the competition by going to our Twitter, just retweet that tweet and give us a follow on Twitter. That's your place secured, and the winner is announced on the 31st of January, I believe, so head over to the Twitter account for that. Also, if you like what you hear, guys, head over to our iTunes page. We'd really appreciate any reviews you'd like to leave on our iTunes page. You'll see a couple already up on there, so if you like what you hear, give us a review over on our iTunes page. So, on with the show, lads, and as I mentioned, a couple of games since we last recorded. First up, of course, the Leicester Cup game. Knew it was going to be a tricky game up there at Leicester. Of course, it always is. They're in fine form at the moment. Both teams once again rested a raft of players for the game. Let's head over to Ricky first up, mate.
I thought we played very, very well. I didn't think at any point in the game we were struggling. I thought we controlled the game very, very well. And I have to just say, when the lineup was announced, I was completely and utterly staggered by the reaction. It just seemed as if some people forgot we were competing on three fronts: Premier League, Europa League, FA Cup. It just seemed like everybody completely forgot and didn't take into account that we had, I think, 9 out of the 11 players starting were fully fledged international players. Yes, they weren't the consistent number of players that were in the Premier League each week, but these players need games. Simple as that. The squad that we've got, it's very hard to keep a team of 11 happy. And furthermore, the squad in general, Pochettino has to give everybody game time to feel part of it. And I think what you saw is a team, or should I say a squad, that really is playing for the manager. Sometimes players feel like they're his favourites, but what Pochettino has done in terms of the squad is that everybody is playing for him. So he knows that if a player is injured, another player is going to come in and will be committed to the cause. It's not a case of dropping a player and being fearful that a Fazio is going to come in, or like last season a Capu or a Paulino is going to come in, where they know that they're not going to be a regular feature and they're being asked to fill in for a game. What we've got here is a squad that all of them will be playing games. All of them know they're needed, and it's one of the most together squads in terms of players, management, it's the most together Tottenham squad I've experienced in my time of supporting them. But on the game itself, I thought we controlled the game very, very well. I have to say, Tom Carroll again got a lot of stick again for starting the game, and I personally can't see what's wrong with the kid.
Why is that, do you think, Rick? Why do you think Tom Carroll comes in for so much stick on social media, especially?
I don't know, Andy, but what I will say is that I can't see where the kid is a problem player. I think he's got a great eye for a pass. I've got no problem with the kid filling in starting games. Listen, I think the issue is that I think many know that when Dembele isn't there, of course, if you're going to compare Dembele to Carroll, they're two completely different players. Carroll is an easy on the eye kind of player, will find a pass. He's not going to be able to control the ball and hold the ball well as what Dembele does. But at the same time, that's not the kid's fault that Dembele's been out. You know, Carroll is filled in very, very well. And I think the issue we've got now, Andy, is that we've got rid of so much rubbish over the last 18 months, 24 months, that we're running out of people to scapegoat. And unfortunately for Tom, unfortunately for him, because he's inexperienced in terms of the Spurs side and he's had to wait and bide his chance, like many when Kane broke into the side, and like Bentaleb, a lot of them weren't, a lot of fans weren't up for giving them a chance. But I've got no problem with Carroll. I agree with the majority that he's not he's not a first team starter. But by all means, if you've got key players out, then I've got no hesitation bringing the kid in. He played very, very well during that game. And I think we were well worthy of a 2-0 win. I don't think it was ever in danger. And it shows that the team he put out on the game, we won the game comfortably, and it was merited. I think many people forgot to think about the fact that Leicester, they rested 5 key players, including their first choice centre-back. So in regards to Leicester, obviously them resting 5 key players in Vardy, Mahrez, Morgan, Okazaki in that. I mean, so for Leicester themselves, they rested key players. So I think some perspective was to be needed in terms of the team that Spurs put out there. Like I said, 9 of the 11 players fielded were internationals, and the result proved itself. We looked fairly, fairly comfortable. And the most important thing is that we're in the hat, and we've got a very, very good chance now of progressing in this competition with Colchester on Saturday.
Yeah, I just wonder, I mean, it's a very simplistic way of looking at things, I know, but I just wonder if the Tom Carroll factor is down to his size. I know it's a very simple way of looking at things, but it's almost like that, that playground effect, isn't it? The smallest one gets picked on. I just wonder, because he's very easy on the eye, isn't he? You can't see anything in that would lead to any criticism. Maybe it's the Dembele, because Dembele's been performing so well this season. But I agree. You just can't see any reason that he'd get criticism, really, because he hasn't done anything in there that would deserve that kind of criticism that he seems to get on social media. He seems a great lad, from what you hear from the coaches. So I'm not sure, but it's a great point. And as Ricky mentioned there, it was a much changed side once again, Jace. We saw, some of the squad players come back into the team. And again, there was another cracking goal from Son.
Yeah, he came in and did well, didn't he? Scored one and made the other goal, and buzzed around, and that's what we want the players to do when they come in, to make that impact, and such was his impact. He kept his place for the Palace game. I think with the team that we put out, as Rick says, it's full of, I still think, first-team players coming into the squad. When you bring in Chadleys and Son, when you've paid £20 million for a player, you have to say he's a first-team player, don't you? But I think, the one thing with the side where people go mad is the second striker thing, isn't it? When there isn't that one focal point up front, then the side looks weaker, and I think that's always going to be the problem for us, and it's still going to be the problem as we go into the rest of the season.
Yeah, it looks that way, doesn't it? I mean, is he, Jason, in your opinion, is he capable of stepping up and replacing Kane up top on his own?
I think there's probably certain games where he's capable of doing it in. But if we were playing, for instance, if it's the North London derby tomorrow, or we're playing Man United, or we're playing one of those bigger sides, I still think you have to have a genuine focal point as a striker. That's not to say he wouldn't score goals, but I can't see Son. If Harry Kane got injured tomorrow, would Son score 10 to 12 goals between now and the end of the season? I'm not so sure he would. And would it affect the way we have to play? I think it would do. So I think that's always going to be the problem we're up against.
Yeah, it's a great shout. He's not a target man, is he? In the Kane mould, he doesn't come across as the type of player that can hold the ball up and bring players into it. He's more sort of player that would run onto a through ball, isn't he? If anything, although as we've seen, he can score, from anywhere on the pitch, and lovely goal it was. John, we've spoken there about the squad. Does this game go to show, because there have been questions about it, does this game go to show the strength in depth that we've got, do you think?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think, especially with Son, talking about him now, what Jace has just said is valid, obviously. But I think he's made something like 10 starts or 11 starts. He's got, I think it's 6 goals and 5 assists, or the other way around. So for goals to starts, he's probably the best in the squad. And I think that because he's not Harry Kane, in the same way that Tom Carroll's not Moussa Dembele, again, people sort of, certain players get a hard time because it's hard to come in and replace and play like the players that they're replacing. But I think the best thing in terms of the squad, in the last 3 games, because we didn't get a chance to mention Sunderland just yet, but the criticisms that have been thrown at the team and the squad and the manager so far this season have been about being able to break teams down, especially at home, making too many changes in games and bringing on game changes from the bench. And in the last 3 games since we last spoke, we played a very resolute Sunderland team who went 1-0 up at White Hart Lane. They then brought on an extra defender. And for what I know, the guy that came on, Jan Kirchhoff, didn't exactly cover himself in glory. But in that game, we did break down a resolute side 4 times nonetheless. Following game against Leicester, big reshuffle. And I thought it was such a good performance. Every single player to a man were magnificent in that game. There weren't any point, apart from there was a volley that Form did well to save a point-blank range right at the end. I don't think there was any other times in the game where I was really that worried. And then on Saturday, against Palace, we're 1-0 down. He brings Chadley on. He took off Dyer, which was a very attacking substitution, and we go on to win 3-1. So I think everything's just looking absolutely rosy at the minute. And if you take them 3 games that I've just mentioned and the situations which have led to victories, it does show that I think Pochettino's slowly giving a middle finger salute to the rest of the world and saying, oh, I've got this, trust me, and I trust him implicitly. If we don't end up signing anyone between now and the end of the window, as long as everyone stays fit, it's just a really, really great time to be a Spurs fan at the minute.
It is. It's a really good point you make about Pochettino and the way he's going about his business there, because he's very much in that sort of Pellegrini mould, isn't he? In that he doesn't make a fuss about anything. He goes about, he doesn't blame anyone else. He gets down to work, and all the players seem to be behind him. And
I think that comes with partly with his stubbornness, which is quite obvious as well.
Yeah.
He doesn't hide. If he does get it wrong, he won't hide. And on the flip side, when he gets it right, he don't come out and blow his own trumpet too much. I love the guy. I think it's just brilliant at the minute.
So contact Mr. Mannings for the Pochettino fan club.
Well, it's just another example of Ricky saying something that can't happen or won't happen. You having that, Rick? Right? We ain't got no plan B. He's making too many changes. We can't break teams down.
Listen, he's doing the job, but it does worry me. It still worries me, John, that if we don't bring anyone in this window, only because, like you've just said, pinch yourself, what a time to be a Spurs fan. I've gone from thinking at the start of the season, 5th or 6th at best, to then now, I'm thinking if we don't get in the Champions League, I won't be angry, I'll be disappointed. But now I'm thinking, if Arsenal come to Spurs with a 2-point gap and White Hart Lane is rocking, then by God, do you know what I mean? What an atmosphere we're going to get. But the only concern I said to you was that I still feel the position we're in now, if we go and get a second striker, because like I said, if everyone is fit, it's the Spursian Spurs tells me something. You don't even know what's around the corner. You never know what's around the corner in regards to Kane, or that worries me. If Kane gets an injury, although Son has come in and done well, he's not a natural striker, nor is NG. The opportunity is there for us. I still think we've got to go and buy a striker. I think we have got to. That's just my opinion, but that's my concern. If we don't buy someone, this is the best chance Spurs will ever get at winning the Premier League, in my opinion.
There he's gone and said it now. There's no taking it back now, Rick. You've gone and said it.
Sorry. It's on record. It's on record.
That means it's going to happen, surely. Ricky says it.
Come on.
This is Spurs. Well, you know what, lads? It's lovely to think and lovely to be able to dream, isn't it? And as Rick says there, it's a great opportunity. The next thing we're all going to be looking at is, can they kick on and take that opportunity? Because there have been so many times when we've been burnt in the past, haven't there? And I think you do become, even the most optimistic of us become a little bit realistic when it comes to Spurs. You kind of think, we've been here before and we've lost a 13-point lead, or so you're quietly optimistic but also cautious on the other side. And I think that's probably the right way to be, isn't it? Because we've learned the hard way. Andrew, you're watching from that side, buddy. The squad we know we've just mentioned seems a lot stronger. There was also comment that I think Graham Souness maybe mentioned that he thinks, in his opinion, this is the best squad we've had since the Champions League season. Now, you mentioned to us previous that it was that Champions League season and players like Bale that drew you into supporting Spurs. Would you go along with that this is the strongest squad we've had since that era? Yeah,
I definitely can agree with that, since, the Harry Redknapp teams, while they had, I think, the top-end quality on those teams, guys like Bale and Modric are superior to anything we had now. But Harry was the type of manager where he'd play the first 11 every single game. And if someone got injured, everything would sort of fall apart, as it did that season. We blew that 10-point lead over Arsenal late in the season. This team, while I was a bit skeptical and I wasn't exactly thrilled with the lineup choice against Leicester, the performance definitely showed that, with the exception of maybe a second striker, we really do have that type of squad. If you look at the guys who are coming off our bench, it's guys like Chadley, Mason, Bentaleb, guys who last year were everyday players on a team that finished 5th. So while we haven't seen as much of them this season, and we definitely invested really well in the transfer window last summer, I think Toby Alderweireld is a top 3 signing in the Premier League this season, with the exception of maybe Dimitri Payet, probably the top signing. And Son, while he hasn't gotten a ton of game time in the Premier League, he has most of the time made a really big impact. He scored the winners against Watford and Palace, or the winner against Palace earlier in the season in Watford. So yeah, I can definitely see how we could fight on 3 fronts. We put out a team with 9 changes, and I think we comfortably beat Leicester. I think while no one has mentioned Vorm yet, people have been a bit skeptical over Vorm, especially given last year's FA Cup and maybe the League Cup against Arsenal earlier in the year. But I thought he made two or three really, really top-notch saves that kept it at 1-0, or still kept us in the game. And I thought the performance last Wednesday was possibly the best I'd seen all season. And it was really, really encouraging that, with the exception of maybe a striker, which is, again, debatable, although I think Chadley, people saying Son, second striker, and I think it could even be a possibility that Chadley fills in that number 10 role. He shoots the ball very well, and they experimented with him at striker in preseason with that friendly against AC Milan. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot to be excited about, but it's Spurs, so you never know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, absolutely. It's looking very good, isn't it? But let's see. Jace, in terms of the squad there, it was also mentioned during the coverage on BBC over here. I don't know if you caught this over there, but it was mentioned that Leicester might actually not be too bothered about going out of the FA Cup because it would then give them the opportunity to really concentrate on the league. They'd have less games to play, whereas Spurs, should they continue in the cup competitions, they might have another extra, I think it was 18 games to play if they're to progress in all the cup competitions, which would equal a total of about 60 games played this season. Where do you stand on that one in terms of the not wanting to go out of the cup, but not being bothered about going out of the cup because it then allows you to concentrate on other competitions?
I want to play the 66 games or whatever we're playing.
Yeah.
You know, it's as simple as that. I mean, if we play 60 odd games, that means what we've done well in the league and we're in 2 cup finals. I mean, I can't see why anyone wants to be knocked out of a cup. And you know, I think one thing from the Leicester game, you know, the support up there was exceptional, wasn't it? I mean, the noise was incessant right the way through the game. I thought a lot of the amount of players that tweeted and that on social media after the game that had been involved in the game. You saw Pochettino go over to the supporters at the end. I think, you know, maybe some of the players within that squad suddenly realised just how important the FA Cup was to the supporters, and maybe that was a good thing. You could just sense the players were buzzing about the win afterwards as well. And you know, you've got to with so many of the players seem to be buzzing at the performance and the result, that, you know, hopefully they understand now just what the cup means to us and how much we should be trying to do well. Just on the striker point, when somebody said about the Arsenal game, wouldn't it be great if we could get Diego Costa just for that one game? I'd just love to sign Diego Costa. You imagine Wenger's face if we lined up with Diego Costa in the side.
Be a picture, wouldn't it? Be a picture. But no, I mean, you know, I agree with you totally, Jason. We've mentioned, all of us on this show, haven't we, how important the FA Cup is to Spurs, and we also mentioned last week, look, we get past Leicester, you got Colchester in the next round, which, all due respect to Colchester, they're a League One side. It's a fantastic opportunity to get through to the 5th round. You know, you're then looking at the quarters. So, you know, although there's still a long way to go, you've got a fighting chance, haven't you? You know, and you've got to go for it, I think. Although Pochettino's got a very delicate balance to make, and I appreciate that. It's very easy for likes of me to sit on social media and criticise his team selection, but for him, this is about trying to balance a squad of what, 20, 25 players and getting the best result for each game. So I can see that completely. But also, I think the FA Cup, although it's lost a lot of that prestige that it once had, it's still huge, you know, still huge to Spurs. There's replicas of the FA Cup all over the stadium at Spurs, you know, because it was our trophy. Eight times we've won it, you know, and it's so important to this club. You think of a lot of the history videos you watch, a lot of the great Spurs moments, I'd say probably 60% of them are from the FA Cup, you know. So, Rick, let's move. I'll tell you what, let's go on to that striker debate, seeing as we're sort of edging around it at the moment. Pochettino has sat through press conferences now and again, he's told the press that we are not looking necessarily for any specific player. We're not in need of a striker desperately. It seems to be in contrast to the majority of Spurs fans' views. So how can you explain Pochettino's comments on that one, mate?
Obviously, you know I love Poch, so I am going to defend him and say that he's defending Levy purely because, listen, make no doubt about it, Pochettino wants another striker. I can't believe, as much as he can keep telling that story to the press as much as he wants, but I don't think he's going to believe it. He can keep saying it. He has got to sit there and tell the press that, you know, I'm happy with the squad. Because if he sits there and outwardly says, I want another striker, number one, prices go up. Number two, who's the fall guy if we don't sign a striker? It's Daniel Levy. So he has to some degree, say that I am happy with the squad, but I do want to keep saying he has said in every press conference that if the right player comes up, then he will consider him. But my stance over the last God knows how many shows has been I want Berahino, and I'm starting to get the feeling that maybe when we are not as keen as what we first was, because it does seem to be from him a repetitive theme in that when he is asked about a striker, he does keep saying it's got to be the right one. And I think what you've seen over the last month or so, or certainly I've seen it, you boys will probably agree that this is probably the most together squad Spurs have had in a long time. So maybe he's of that thinking that, am I going to risk bringing in a player that can potentially upset it? And as much as I've already said that I don't think Berahino kicked off for the wrong reasons, I think the player was promised a move. That move never really facilitated, and therefore he was angry at the fact that he wasn't allowed to join Spurs. Having said that, maybe now Pochettino does have slight reservations over whether Berahino would fit the bill. I still think the player does. I mean, personally for me, he ticks every box we're looking for. He's young, he's pacey, he's English, played with Kane before, can play in a 4-4-2, can play in a 4-3-2-1, can play as a lone striker as well, so he gives you that option. Yes, he is cup-tied, I think, like Jace mentioned a few shows ago, but for me, he'd be the one I go for. My concern is that what I don't want us to do is risk bringing in another foreign signing, and then you've got that issue where he's not going to settle. Many seem to suggest Charlie Austin. Charlie Austin would never have been a Levy signing. There's no sell-on value there at all. Levy's only going to bring a player in that he feels has got a sell-on value. I think the only case that he never did that was for Scott Parker, and when under Redknapp, when at the time he was a player that we needed at that point. Listen, he might do it this. I might be completely wrong. He might go out and get a 30-year-old in, who, I mean, I can only really see him buying a player in, possibly if he's over 30 on a loan. That's all I can see. Otherwise, I see him going for a young prospect like a Moussa Dembele at Fulham, that again has got the potential, like an Alli, to produce something out of the ordinary and come into the squad straight away. But if you're asking me, do Spurs need a second striker? My answer will be yes. If we don't sign a second striker, yes, I will be frustrated, because not only do I feel there's a chance at the top four here, like I've said to you boys, I'm maybe being ridiculous here and dreaming that we're in a title race. I know we don't want to say it, maybe we're afraid to say it, but make no doubt about it, the great Thierry Henry for Arsenal fans has even come out and said it. So if he's going to say it, and I'm a Spurs fan, I'm going to say it as well. We're in a title race here, and we shouldn't be fearful of it, because we don't know. Listen, for us it's new, but these players seem to want to take up the baton, if you like.
Yeah.
What I will say is that this season, every time we've suffered a defeat, look at the character. We've produced back-to-back wins. Like John has said, Pochettino's been slated for his tactics. He's changed his tactics. He's got the win. But that only works to a certain degree. It only works to a certain degree. Don't forget the amount of draws you've had this season. Turn those draws into wins. Where would we be now? That's my point on the second striker. If you're serious about having a go in terms of, putting yourself properly in the top four. Yes, we've got a nice gap now between ourselves and Man United. 5 points, 6 if you consider the goal difference. But we could really, really firmly put ourselves in the top four without having to look over our shoulders if we go and get ourselves a second striker. So for me, it's still a no-brainer.
So just to put a scenario towards you, Jace, if Pochettino is adamant that he wants to wait for the right striker, which, is his right to do so, if he does that and he waits till the summer, but it then costs us a place in, let's say, the top four, is he justified in doing that?
Well, I can imagine social media then absolutely going ballistic if he doesn't, if we did then miss out on the top four. It's his head on the block at the end of the day, isn't it? Because then you can imagine, we know what Daniel Levy's fickle finger can be like. I mean, just with the other part with the Berahino business was the last time we signed a striker that came with a questionable attitude. He had a really poor way that he handed in a transfer request, gave it on the day of a club that was relegated. Everyone questioned his attitude. Everyone said, "Oh, what a terrible thing to do. This bloke's a terrible poisonous bloke." That bloke was Jermaine Defoe. And that didn't turn out too badly for us, did it? I don't remember him disrupting our squad too much all the time he was there.
No, record European scorer, isn't he, Jace? I think.
No. So, if Berahino's got the same attitude problems that Jermaine Defoe had, I'd be on the phone tomorrow trying to pick him up.
Yeah, bring it on, I say. I can totally see it. And it's a difficult one because nobody totally knows what's going on there, do they, at the moment? I mean, Pulis has come out and said that he's been training hard, and you kind of get the impression that he's trying to sell him but also doesn't want to undervalue him. It's a tricky one. He doesn't want to come out and maybe speak his mind because that might put clubs off if there is anything negative there. So nobody really knows what's going on. There's rumours that even Chelsea were sniffing around, before they were sniffing around Pato. It seems every player we're linked to now they go for as well. So
I think if Chelsea got him, they would get him purely to stop us getting him.
Yeah.
They've done that before, haven't they? Did that with Salah when Liverpool wanted him. They did it, I suppose they did it to us with William, although they have at least used him. But they've done it before with players. Just they see a rival club and think we can stop them buying him. We'll pay him the fortune, and then we'll 6 months' time we'll cut our losses on him.
Yeah.
So I can't see that Chelsea would really be interested in Berahino.
No, absolutely. I think the fact that they've got 33 players out on loan just shows the hoarding of players that they take part in at Chelsea. It staggers belief how it's allowed to even happen, doesn't it? They've got players of the likes of Victor Moses who's been sent out on loan.
There's another one, isn't it, Victor Moses, that they've bought loads of people like that to stop other people taking them.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's going to go on as long as the FA allow it, you would think. But John, in terms of the striker debate, just finishing up on this one before we move on to the Crystal Palace review. In terms of the striker debate, if we're to believe that we have adequate replacements for Kane, and previous games have shown, although he's been scoring, Kane does at times look fatigued, doesn't he? Does at times look to be drifting a little bit. It's been commented that he does badly need a rest. If we're told that we've got these players like Son, and why aren't they, do you think, played instead of Kane? Give Kane a rest for a game, and if we've got these players that are capable, put them in.
That's a good question. I think basically it's because every game is as important as the one before, and it's as important as the next one.
Yeah.
And if you're going to go with you've got to go with your strongest 11 as often as you can. And let's not forget, obviously, the only person that gets to see Harry Kane at close quarters is Pochettino in terms of how fit he is, how well he's training, all the rest of it. Let's not forget he's a young man. He's only 22, and it's not like he's been doing this for 15 years and the body's starting to wear out. And I think Harry Kane seems to be the kind of player that wants to play, and he would want to play every game. But going back to what was said earlier, with Jay said about he wants to play the 60-odd games. If you think back to our greatest season ever, the club's greatest ever season, they used 17 players in the double winning team, and 3 of them only played one game. So when you look at it like that, and the advancing from the pitch to the ball to the medical facility, that available to the players, it shouldn't really be a problem, I don't think. And I would imagine the players would rather play than train. You know what I mean? I always did as a kid. I'd rather play games and train, and I think that as long as you're getting enough time in between to prepare for the next game, then it's not really a problem. But I just think with Kane, I mean, he has been given rests as and when we can. We could go out to Florence and absolutely smash Fiorentina, and we can rest him at home. And I'd imagine he'll get a rest on Saturday, which means that he only would have started 1 in 3 if that's the case. So I do think he is getting enough protection, to be honest. And all that worries me a little bit is obviously Vertonghen took a knock he hurt his knee as he fell after being elbowed. That's really the only one so far that's worried me all season. We've seemed to have been getting away with it, touch wood, and no one's really got a bad knock, or not one of the more important players anyway. But I just think like Kane would be the type of player that wants to play, and we want him to play, don't we?
I think as well, it's just the further into the competitions you go, in theory, the better the sides you get. So, Colchester away, absolutely no problem, rest Kane. Then you get to, say, a fifth round and you think, OK, let's try and get a nice home draw, you don't mind. But at some stage, you're going to have to beat a Chelsea, or you're going to have to beat a Manchester City, or you're going to have to beat an Arsenal, or you're going to have to beat Man United or someone like that. And then, you face, say, the second leg, Fiorentina. Say we've gone out there, got a draw, or we come back with a 1-goal defeat or a 1-goal lead. You think, right, now we've got to get a result at White Hart Lane. You got to play Kane. Then you come to the game, oh Christ, we've got a Premier League game on the Wednesday. Then it's FA Cup away at, say, Chelsea. Or do we really want to go to Chelsea without Kane? And it's the further you go in those competitions where that that becomes more noticeable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about the squad, isn't it, Jace? You know, it's so important nowadays, and we've seen that from other sides, the likes of the Cities and the Chelseas of old. Maybe not Chelsea this season, but the ability to be able to rotate, and it's how you do it as well. You know, it's about managing the squad. And so far, Pochettino, I think, you know, although there's been criticism of him in certain ways in terms of the rotation, so far I think, you know, he's not done too badly, is he? And even the defence, I mean, he changed the defence completely on midweek against Leicester, but that was absolutely brilliant. You know, you can't fault the defence. Absolutely brilliant. So far, so good. I just think, in terms of Kane, very quickly going back to Kane, I think Kane's biggest problem at the moment is that he's suffering from a lack of competition. For me, last season we saw him bullying players, bullying defenders. He was like a dart to the ball, wasn't he? Just absolutely fantastic. This season he's been great. Don't get me wrong, I love Kane to bits, but at times I think there's that slight edge missing at the moment that I think extra competition could bring back to his game.
I think maybe he's just managing his own game, in that he thinks, if I have got to play Saturday, Wednesday type of thing, or Sunday, Thursday, whichever way you want to describe it, you know, he knows he can't chase every lost cause.
Yeah.
He knows he can't constantly go and close people down, because otherwise he will burn himself out.
The other thing is, Andy, on the flip side to what you just said, I think he's got 12 in 14.
Yeah.
So if he did have competition, imagine how many he'd score.
Yeah, get that strike. And absolutely, John, you know, and that's the big point, isn't it?
I just think it's how we're conditioned as Tottenham supporters.
Of course,
I think.
yeah.
Because we have had strikers recently.
Yeah.
Who you know, they're mercenary kind of players, and they do need to kick up the bum. Whereas you got Harry Kane now, who's playing for the shirt, loves the club, and it makes no difference if Pele's on the bench ready to come on to replace him. He's going to play and put as much effort in as if he wasn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you mentioned Pele there, John, which leads me quite nicely onto Crystal Palace, because there was a goal during that game that I'm told that even Pele would have been proud of. Andrew, listen.
He would have been proud of it. Pele scored.
I mean, it was a goal out of Pele's locker, wasn't it? Andrew, what a goal. Let's start with the game first up. Went into the game knowing it was going to be a tough game. It always is, isn't it? Pardew puts out tough teams against Spurs. I remember against Newcastle a couple of seasons ago, he seemed to have a bit of a sign over Spurs, you know, and it's always going to be tough there, because they're quite an attacking side, aren't they? Play a very open game. But first half, they seem to fall back into that trap that many Spurs opponents have done this season, where they sit behind the ball. They packed their defence, didn't they? And it was noticeable. Even the commentators, I think, mentioned it, that Crystal Palace were 11 men behind the ball at time, trying to play on the counter attack. But Spurs, somehow they found a way through it again, didn't they? And I think now we've got the best record of coming from behind in the league this season. So with the comeback kings this season, sometimes it's frustrating that it takes us going behind to start playing, but they did it, didn't they? And some cracking goals in there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the first half, you look at a fixture like Crystal Palace away, we lost there last season, and we won the year before on a Soldado penalty, which was one of the very few goals he scored for us. It was actually his first. But it seems like every single team we play against, they put men behind the ball and they try and find a goal out of nowhere. And unfortunately, in our last 4 league games, we've conceded first. We conceded first against Everton, we conceded first against Leicester, we conceded first against Sunderland, we conceded first against Palace on Saturday. And they're sort of goals where you think, wow, how did that go in? How are we a goal behind right now? And yeah, it seems like every game has a predictable pattern where the other team gives Spurs the share of possession. Spurs in the first half didn't really create too many clear-cut chances. I know Rose had that one where he shot it straight at Hennessy from about 3 yards. But the second half, we mentioned earlier, Chadley coming on for Dyer. And I thought I was a little confused to how the formation was going to work after the substitution, because you didn't really have the second player in the hole. You could maybe slot Dele Alli back. But it definitely worked out for the best. I think 3-1 as a scoreline kind of flattered us, because it was a really, really, really tight game, especially at 1-1 when they hit the crossbar twice and Lloris made another world-class save, reminding us that he's still there, even if he's not called upon too often. He can always come up with that 1 or 2 world-class saves that can preserve us a point or three. And I know the rest will probably go in depth about Dele Alli's goal, but I was a bit surprised by Chadley's goal. I was screaming at my laptop, no, 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 take it to the corner flag. And when he scored, it was definitely a very impressive 3 points. It's a sort of, when you look at games at the beginning of the season, Crystal Palace away is a potential banana skin.
Yeah.
And we passed that litmus test, and we have another litmus test at Norwich next week. Onwards and upwards, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It was always going to be a tricky game, wasn't it? And they didn't just pass the test, as you say, they passed it with flying colours in the end, thanks to some cracking goals, which we will, I promise, come on to. Rick, we talked there about teams putting 11 men behind the ball. It's happened again and again. And it seems to happen every single game, no matter the opponents, no matter how they normally play. They seem to, against Spurs, pack 11 men behind the ball. Is that a sign of just how good Spurs are at the moment?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Andy. That is just a true testament to how far Pochettino has taken this Spurs side, that teams now, they're afraid to take us on in terms of 11 men v 11 men and going at us, because they know the quality that we've got from defence. I think even Pardew alluded to the fact that Vertonghen and Alderweireld were that good. They could be even seen as central midfielders. We've got two centre-backs that are so comfortable on the ball. They've got the ability, really, both of them. They could easily both play as a CDM because of how comfortable they are on the ball. In the past, Spurs, we've had defenders that their first objective is to get the ball clear. They haven't got the ability to kind of take a touch. They're so composed as centre-backs, and that's obviously coming from the back. And you've got Lloris. Tottenham's way is to try and play out from the back, and we nearly got caught in the first half where Hugo Lloris tried to play out from the back and we nearly conceded the goal, but that didn't stop us. I think Pochettino encourages us to play out from the back, and as a Spurs side, like you've just said there, Andy, teams are afraid to take us on 11 v 11, but what this Spurs side have, which is what we haven't had in the past, and even I go as far as Redknapp, this Spurs side find a way to win. We find a way to win, and you made a great point there that we've had the most, we've come from behind. I think 14 points we've gained from losing positions. What shouldn't be forgotten as well is the late goals. Last season we had the Eriksen late goals. In terms of goals that we're scoring now, it's late on again, and that's not a coincidence. That is again due to the condition of the players, the fact that how Pochettino trains them in the pre-season. I've made it a point of saying that quite a few occasions, where our players are rigorously put through that training session at the very start of pre-season. They're drilled into the ground, so they know what they're expecting in terms of a season, that in those last 10-15 minutes where the opposition are wary, you've got Dele Alli picking the ball up out of nowhere, putting it over Jedinak's head and producing one of the best finishes I've seen in a long, long time. And I said at the time when that goal went in, the celebratory level for me, I compared that goal to when Bale scored against West Ham, purely because it was just something out of nothing. It was just unbelievable, because we're in that position again where you're thinking 1-1, it's 2 points dropped, and you're thinking what a chance we had, and Man United are losing at home, and you think, oh God, what an opportunity here if we could snatch 3 points. And then Ali does that, and I think, like you said, that Chadley's goal, Chadley's scored a great goal, but the problem is, because of how good Ali's goal was, it kind of took the gloss off how good Chadley's was.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt sorry for Chadley in a way, because any other day if he puts that in that way he done, he'd be given great credit, but because that just followed after Ali's goal, you were still in bewilderment. Ali done that, but on the performance, it was just remarkable. Do you know what I mean? As a team, it was such a great team performance again, and the character. And I have to say, Wimmer coming on, bearing in mind it was his Premier League debut, for that last 20 minutes, I don't think we were troubled that much. I think he looked very, very composed, and fingers crossed, Vertonghen's not out for too long. It's not the most damaging injury. But isn't it a nice feeling at the moment to sit back and think, if Vertonghen is out for a small period, then Wimmer, it looks like to me, we've got the most composed replacement coming in, rather than fearing a Fazio or a Kirikes that's going to come in. So everything is so positive. You have to pinch yourself. Like I say, it's a fantastic time to be a Spurs fan. And I want to keep saying that this Tottenham team that we've got here, it always finds a way. It just seems to be a case where even if we go 1-0 down, I'm not too concerned, because we know this team will create chances. But like I said, my concern is that on the days when we don't have that game changer, that's our concern. But taking nothing away from this performance, it was a fantastic, fantastic win. And again, I think it's a statement. Look at the league where we are now. We're 5 points off top. We're 5 points clear of United. I keep saying it. This is the best chance Spurs will ever, ever, ever have of winning the Premier League. Whisper it quietly if you want. Say it out loud. It's a fantastic opportunity. And, if you want to dismiss it, you can do. But you got to say, when are we going to get the chance as a Spurs fan again to be sitting here where we are and not dreaming of a Premier League? Because I know I am. Even if it's quietly, I am dreaming of it.
Maybe Poch thinks that as well, because I thought that to take off Eric Dyer was actually quite early in the game, wasn't it? It was, 55 minutes or whatever. And I think, maybe he realised we now have to go for 3 points.
He's gambled, Jason. He's just he's gambled.
Yeah, I think, early in the season when we had so many draws, he would never have taken Eric Dyer off in the 55th minute. And I think it suddenly dawned on him, no, we have got to come here now. We can't keep a point here is a good point. Because, when everyone keeps saying it's a difficult place to go, Palace, they've won 4 games out of 12 at home. So it's not a difficult place to go. Chelsea went there and won 3-0, for God's sake. So it's not a difficult place. If you're going to go and compete in the top 4 or going to go and win the league, you have to go to Crystal Palace and win. Yeah, it'll be tough at times in the game. You'll be under the cosh for a little 10-minute spell. You'll have a bit of frustration in the game. But the best teams in the league will go there and win. And I think it finally dawned on Poch. We cannot play for a point here and make this change with 15, 20 minutes to go. I'm making it now and I'm going for it, gung-ho type of thing. And I was absolutely delighted to see him do that.
The thing is, Andy, if I could just jump in there, it's not by accident, mate. It really ain't.
No.
Like, if you're... all the things that have been levelled at Poch this season, like we've already mentioned a few of them tonight, about no plan B, no game changers, running out of ideas, getting blocked off at home and all the rest of it. Before, we've mentioned on the pod a few times this season about, we're not getting as many late winners as we have, and we're not on it until the last minute like we was last season, and other little things like that. And the thing is, I'm not sure whether it's just me, but no one else seems to notice the fact that everything that goes wrong or not quite right, Pochettino learns from, and it's usually remedied pretty much instantly. Now, we mentioned for the first 3 months of the season, we're talking, Jace is bringing out his draw stats, right? Since we lost to Newcastle, I think we've drawn once in the league, so that's remedied, right? We've now won more points from losing positions than any other. That's been remedied. We broke down a Resolute team at home. We bought players off the bench to change games. We've rotated and still won, and all of this has happened within the last 8 or 9 games. Now, if we went for an entire season and we drew like 18 games, and it was something that wasn't ever learnt from or remedied, then you start going, right, well, maybe this manager's not up to much. But it really staggers me that he's not people are still saying that, when you're talking about manager of the season, no one's mentioning Pochettino. And I think, mate, I don't know whether it's because it's only Tottenham or everyone hates us and all the rest of it. But when you strip it back and look at it, really, everything that's been asked of him, he has done, and he's passing everything with flying colours, and he's answering everyone. What's going to be levelled at him next? It's like, I don't know why it's. I don't want to get negative, but I don't know why, people can't see him for the magnificent, in my opinion, manager that he is, because we're not having the same shit every week, the same problems every week. Something happens, he does something about it, and it just. I mean, I don't know really what more there is that we could come up against that we haven't already dealt with this season.
John, just to, and not saying for a moment I believe this myself, but just to play devil's advocate here, because there might be a few out there that are thinking this way. What about those that are saying or thinking that the season is only the way it is because of the weakness of the so-called Champions League regulars in Man United, in Chelsea? What about those that would say that this season is we're only in that top 4 at the moment because those teams are so weak?
With the amount of points we've got after this many games, we'd be in the top 4 regardless. You look back, after 23 games, 42 points would be enough to be in and around that area. It don't matter who we're in there with. It's not our fault that Chelsea and Man United have not had particularly good seasons, and it's not like they're guaranteed a Champions League spot, so it shrinks to 3 teams if Man United are not in it, or it shrinks to two teams if Chelsea are not either.
Yeah,
it's only because, I know what you're saying, but I mean, the results we've picked up against the teams we've beat or got points from, we'd be doing that regardless of what Man United and Chelsea are doing. To be fair, we took none off of Man United and only 1 off of Chelsea so far this season. So it's not like it's not like we're stealing their points, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it's just because their ineptitude, in my opinion, has been shown up by the fact that they haven't got what we have got, which is a top draw manager.
Absolutely, and there was a lot, we've spoken, haven't we, about how close we came to having Van Gaal as our manager, and how that now looks. And
well, I just think that's part of the reason why I'm at the point now where if Daniel Levy told me the sky's green, I'd believe him because he, so many times
he probably tried to sell it to you as well. In fairness, but
I'd probably buy it to be fair.
Yeah.
But he's, he gets to the point where you think, what are you doing? And then it for whatever reason, just recently, again, Daniel Levy's learnt from his mistakes. He's been burnt, especially in the transfer market. And the fact that we've been a little bit more frugal in that sense and been a little less lavish and maybe do your own work a little bit more on players instead of buying them on reputation. It all adds to the current success of the group of players that we've got with the manager that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. John, I'm the first mate to hold my hands up. I didn't think Pochettino would make it at Spurs because I just didn't think the way we were playing the first season under his charge, the first half of that season, I didn't think was great. The style of football I didn't think was great. I didn't think he'd make it, and he's completely proved me wrong in terms of how he's moulded the players, in terms of their attitude. Hats off to the guy.
Well, I think from the start, you can see why he was brought in my opinion. From the list of potential candidates that were available at that time, you had Frank de Boer, who's all right, he's done well with Ajax, but then you expected to do well with Ajax in that league. You had Van Gaal and you had Pochettino, and I think the reason why Pochettino got the job is because he had a reputation after not very long at Southampton for making players, and also not only making players but making the club a lot of money, which also might have appealed to Daniel Levy.
Yeah, I'm sure that entered his thinking. I actually thought at the time it would be better to go, if I'm honest, for De Boer, purely because he had that trophy record behind him. As you mentioned there, it's not the strongest league in the world. Although the Eredivisie isn't the worst league in the world. I would have gone for him purely based on that. But then this decision has proved how wrong I was, because
the thing is, of course. And all the things that Pochettino was doing at Southampton, he has replicated and bettered, in my opinion, with Tottenham.
Yeah.
He's made like, even if you're just looking at it from a monetary point of view, the value of the squad that he inherited was worth nothing compared to what it is now, in my opinion. And he's made so many players. Like, if you think how much money Southampton recouped for all the players that they let go, like Lallana, Lovren, Lambert, Shaw, and all the rest of them, not one of them has kicked on and become a better player at the new club. And I just think that's it's another reason why we want to keep him and keep the players that he has nurtured, because if we do, then the sky's the limit.
I'll tell you what, just before we move on, because time's ticking away with us, just want to go across the board and get a one-word answer, if I can, just on Dele Alli before we move on. Just want to know, lads, what you think. There's a lot of debate as to how good Dele Alli can go on to become. I just want to know a one-word answer, if you can, yes or no. Can Dele Alli, has he got the potential to go on to be better than Gareth Bale? I can ask you, I know it's a crystal ball type question, but in your gut, Rick?
Can I have two? I was going to say next Bale, because you just said Bale. I was going to say next Bale, only because I'm going to say, I can't shut up. I can't say more than one word.
That's why.
Exactly. The kid can be anything he wants to, but I think, like John has alluded to, Pochettino's the one. If he nurtures him, he can be anything he wants. I'm just enjoying, cherishing, watching him flourish, and long may it continue. He being a Spurs shirt for many, many years. Sorry, that's 10 words. Sorry.
Amen to that. Amen. Andrew?
I think it's too early to tell, but maybe.
So still cautious, Jace?
I think the better comparison is will he go on to be Steven Gerrard? I think he'll be a better player than Gerrard, because I think he's got more of a football brain in him.
Yeah, I like it. Maybe that's absolutely the better question.
I think Gerrard or Lampard's got to be the better comparison for him.
Yeah. And I think Gerrard's already mentioned, isn't he, Jace? We spoke about on the show last week the fact that even he feels that he's better at his age than he was himself. Yeah,
I think the big difference for me is that I don't think Dele Alli will always want to be the Roy of the Rovers, and when we're 2-0 down, start shooting from 35 yards because he wants to be the one that pulls the game back. I think he'll have that little bit more of a football brain to him.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems that way. John?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like it. Let's finish on that note, shall we? Great, isn't it great just to have a player that we're speaking about in those terms? Absolutely fantastic. And he as I mentioned many times, plays with that fire in his belly, which I think we all love. And long may it continue. Let's move on, lads, to the Talking Point feature, which this week we put out on our social media. Every week we put out a Spurs-related debate on the social media, so the Twitter or the Facebook. This week's talking point was, would you rather Spurs qualify for the Champions League in our last season at White Hart Lane, or an FA Cup win, which would be our first in 25 years? So would you rather Spurs finish at White Hart Lane with a Champions League season, or an FA Cup victory, which would be our first in a long time? 25 years, far too long for a team like Spurs. So we put that to the followers on Twitter and Facebook, and the lads have got the responses for us. Rick, do you want to start us off, mate?
So I've got It's Me at Suggs136, who says, surely the answer is both, plus the Europa League as well. I've got Robert. I think I think the issue we've got here, I think loads of people are going to say both if it was an option. Maybe if it was one. But we've got Robert Cameron at Carbon_Robert, who says, win the FA Cup. Can't buy those memories. That'll be replayed year after year. Here. I'm with him. I've got Joe Levy at JoeLevy84, who says, Champions League football. FA Cup would be a bonus, only attracts calibre of player required and needed if you're in the Champions League. #COYS.
Fair point. Yeah, it's a fair point. And no relation, I take it, Joe Levy. But thanks for the comment. You know, you can see his point. I love the FA Cup to bits, but you can see how the Champions League would be the pulling factor in getting the better players. So, absolutely. Jace, what you got, mate?
I got from Paul Leach at OJ Leach. I think all Spurs fans feel like they have to choose. Why not aim for league and all cups? We won't get them all, but let's aim high. Korea Messi, who presumes a Son fan, at Lee Privitera. Both. If not, it has to be cup final day. We all love and remember trophies. Yeah. And from Tom Gin at Tom G Not There. Hard one. Champions League, though. I want to see some of the great teams and players at the Lane go out with a bang and a celebration.
And it's interesting, isn't it, Jace? Because you mentioned on the show last week that great UEFA Cup night at the Lane that you remember watching, and the memories that still live on from that. Would a Champions League season, although the memories of a goal in that competition, the Bell, goal against Maicon, they still live on. It's not quite the same, is it, as that glory night at White Hart Lane that a cup night can bring. It's very different, and I suppose it depends what side of the fence you come from, and a lot will depend also on the era that you support Spurs from, which is what we mentioned, Jace.
Well, I think we've for the last, other than the last couple of years, we used to take the mickey out of Woolwich for saying, oh look, Arsene Wenger thinks he's won a trophy for finishing fourth, and yet they've won nothing for 8 years. So if we're going to level that at other clubs, why are we trying to aim fourth and not win a trophy ourselves? We spent 8 years ripping Arsenal for doing that, and that's what some people seem to want to do. But I understand the thing of the more money you bring in, the higher profile you come in, and maybe in the long run, the higher the players that you bring in, maybe then you can start to then push on and try and win the main prize. But it's ifs and buts, isn't it? For me, try and win a trophy.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for as many as you can and then see what you end up with at the end. It's such an interesting debate, isn't it? It's such a debate that divides opinion out there. It's really interesting to hear them. John?
All right, first of all, to Davis to do, at Dave Bowman77, memories last longer than qualification. Then we've got Joe Burge at Joey_163. Champions League purely for the money. We need that income to help finance new players because of the financial restraints the stadium will bring. And we've got Christian Nash at Christian J Nash. Tough. Financially, Champions League. To rekindle our glorious days in arguably the most famous cup competition in the world, FA Cup every time. What I mean by that is to give younger fans a chance to experience a big cup win and for the first time put us back on the silverware map. I think my personal opinion on this one is the fact that I'd like to think we'd be in Europe during our last season at White Hart Lane anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'd do, like that small Claret and Blue club in London who qualified for Europe for their last season in their ground and then just threw it because they get to play Swansea away, don't they? So they do get one game in Europe this season. So I just think with As I said, I think we'd like to think we'd be in Europe of some kind anyway. But an FA Cup, again, like I keep saying, although the FA Cup, the biggest game of the FA Cup's not actually wouldn't be played at White Hart Lane, it'd be played at Wembley. It'd still be nice to, maybe depending on what way around the fixtures come, for the last ever game at White Hart Lane to have an FA Cup trophy paraded around it. How about that? Yeah.
That's the sort of memory that never dies, does it? That's the sort of thing that you can't put a price on. A lot about the Champions League is money, the financial side, whereas an FA Cup win, it's something that lives on, not just in yourself. It's a family thing because you're with family usually when you're watching it, or you're going out in the streets with your flags and watching the bus parade. It's such an interesting one, and I'm sort of torn. I love the FA Cup. We've mentioned on this show numerous times to death. I've mentioned how much I love the FA Cup, but I also remember that Champions League season and how brilliant it was. Ricky's mentioned just to hear that music played at White Hart Lane, and after years and years of watching other sides in the Champions League, for it to be Spurs, it meant something so much, didn't it?
I think the other thing, Andy, maybe is because that Champions League season we had in 2010-11 was so good. Let that be the last one at White Hart Lane, and let's build a new Champions League legacy in the new ground. Yeah,
it's an interesting one. It's a really interesting. Andrew, you're relatively new to supporting Spurs, and I say this with the greatest of respect. You haven't at the moment witnessed Spurs having won a trophy. Does that alter how important the FA Cup is to you? I mean, you mentioned the Champions League was your first year really of supporting Spurs, so does that alter your priorities in this debate?
Well, I think what really has set my views in this debate is I actually lived in London last year, and I feel that overseas supporters, and especially supporters in the United States, they don't really understand the FA Cup, and they don't really understand its tradition. So you'll see a lot of people on message boards saying top four, forget about the FA Cup. And I'm sort of in the middle on this debate. I know I wrote the article on the website about why the FA Cup should be the utmost priority, although because I hadn't quite realized that I hadn't put two and two together and realized that next season was the last season at White Hart Lane, and that a Champions League season at White Hart Lane, people say that European nights under the lights at White Hart Lane, I mean, if you hear memories, and I think although we lost the semi-final in 1962, people still talk about. And when Eusebio came to White Hart Lane, and although we've only been in the competition twice, they've created some of our best memories. I mean, beating AC Milan, beating Inter Milan. But at the same time, I feel we haven't won a trophy in 25 years. I've never seen, besides last year, I've in the League Cup, which I've only seen one run in the FA Cup, and it ended with a 5-1 loss to Chelsea at Wembley. And although there are some things that can be debated about that game, specifically Mata's goal, but I think we should attack everything on all fronts. I know sometimes people will disagree with that, but we have really good shots at both. We play Colchester, and with a couple more kind draws, it's effectively 2 games away from a trip to Wembley, and that goes back to the overseas versus home base supporters, because the home base supporters that go to every single match, they get the FA Cup, and they all dream of a day out at Wembley supporting Spurs, which overseas supporters don't really get. So having lived both in London and overseas, I can sort of see that divide and see both sides of this debate.
Can I say one thing, Andy, that needs to be very... The only reason why I brought this debate up, just on another perspective, is that for those saying Champions League, the game is about glory for me. For me personally, I want us to see us win trophies. But for those that want the Champions League, what they need to consider is that we are building a stadium, and like many have alluded to, Pochettino is brought in because he can improve players. I don't see that if we was to get a Champions League spot, that we're going to go out and buy a whole raft of players, or we're viewing it as us getting into the Champions League is being viewed as us trying to attract bigger names. I just think from a cost perspective, Levy might be eyeing that kind of budget to go towards the stadium, and I don't know if that's been thought about by some fans. I brought it up the other week actually on social media and said, as much as it'd be great for Spurs to finish in the top 4, I just wonder whether some are looking at the long-term picture, the fact that we've got a stadium to pay for, and Arsenal, how many years did they have to pay for it by selling their best player? Now, Levy's come out and said that the transfer budget won't affect, the stadium. Well, it's got to be paid somehow. So if the money is coming out of the Champions League, then I don't see him making wholesale changes to the squad. I mean, we've got a great squad as it is now, but if you're going to go into the Champions League and play the elite, then it is going to need upgrading in one or two areas. But I don't see where he's going to... I don't see how much money Levy will throw at it, and purely how much money Pochettino will want to throw at it, because at the moment he's got a very together squad. Like we've said, you don't want to bring in players that might upset the apple cart. It seems like he's got a very together group there. So my thing was on the FA Cup Champions League is if we are going for the Champions League, I'm really considering that with that whole attraction of big names, I don't necessarily see that happening. I don't know.
No, it's a really good point. There's no guarantees, is there, Rick? And we saw that last time we qualified for the Champions League in the calibre of players we bought.
There you go.
We didn't
sit it there now on head.
The big thing, Rick, would help keep some of the big names at White Hart Lane. It stops that thing of Hugo wanting to leave to go and get Champions League football, and people saying, "Oh, how long can you keep Harry Kane?" If Man United come with a £70 million bid, well, you say, well, Man United aren't in the Champions League and we are. So why would we fear a bid from? I think that's the other side of it, that it enables you to keep maybe some of those players that maybe wouldn't have left would Modric have gone if we'd have had Champions League football that season? All right, okay, if it's Real Madrid it's slightly different, but going back to the times when we lost Berbatovs and Michael Carricks and Robbie Keanes and people like that, would they have gone had they had Champions League football at White Hart Lane?
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a really good point. And that's another key, isn't it? Keeping those players. Let's just finish up on this subject, lads. Go across the board once more and get your views on the debate, the e-Spurs talking points. So Champions League last season at White Hart Lane or FA Cup win. I'm gonna be quite strict about this one, lads. I'm going to ask you to decide either or on this one. Champions League last season at White Hart Lane or FA Cup win. Rick?
Right, game's about glory. I'm saying FA Cup.
FA Cup. Andrew?
I would usually go with the FA Cup, but the FA Cup's still here, and there's only one season left at White Hart Lane, so I'll go for the Champions League.
Champions League, so 1-1. Jace?
Europa League. Because we win the trophy and we get in the Champions League.
Hey, look, see, he's found another way.
You can give me that one. I'm allowed to have that one. That suits both then.
Absolutely. Listen, I mean, that would be lovely in itself, wouldn't it? Winning that Europa League. Fantastic. John?
It's got to be the FA Cup for me. Like Ricky said, the game's about glory. I'd love to see Hugo Lloris lifting that FA Cup come May.
So it's really interesting, isn't it? We're sort of divided across the board. 2 for the FA Cup, sort of 1 for the Champions League and 1 for the Europa League. So it's such an interesting debate, and I'm sure let's carry it on, lads. If you want to get in touch on Twitter, use the hashtag eSpursTP. Let us know what you guys out there think. And for next week, guys, there's another eSpurs talking point. Use that hashtag eSpursTP. What you come up with, mate?
Right, what we've come up with this week is the last goal at White Hart Lane is scored by one of our players. Who would you most like it to be? But on the flip side, we also want to know the last goal at White Hart Lane is scored by an opposition player. Who would you least like to score the goal, or maybe most like to score the goal for the opposition?
Fantastic. Another really good debate to whet the appetite. Who would you most like it to be from our side, if it was from our side, and who would you least like it to be from the opposition? The last ever goal at White Hart Lane. Really good. Wouldn't it be interesting if we just through a freak of the draw drew Arsenal on the last day of the season next season?
Oh, that would be special.
At White Hart Lane. That's just how Spursy is that, eh?
The Jack Wilshere own goal gives us 3 points. Oh, lovely.
Fantastic. I tell you what, I'd do my own bus parade down White Hart Lane if that...
And maybe the last ever chant heard inside White Hart Lane could be, "What do you think of Wilshere?"
Really, really good debate, lads. And another one that guys out there can get in touch with. So let us know. Hashtag eSpursTP on Twitter or Facebook if you want to get in touch with the Talking Point feature this week, and we'll read the best of those on the show next week. We really are running out of time, lads, so just very quickly I want to get a prediction across the board for Colchester away in the FA Cup, which is next Saturday. Let's get a prediction. Let's go first up to, let's do John.
Well, they're in the relegation zone in League One. We're flying high at the top of the Premier League. I'm going for a draw.
And that's our Mr. Optimism speaking. So John's going for a draw. Let's see if there's anything more optimistic coming from Ricky's way.
Okay, well, I'm going to go 3-1 Spurs. Even though they're League One, I still think we'll see the job. And can I just say one more thing? The next time I'm going to speak, the transfer window will be shut in terms of the Premier League. So this is my last plea. Daniel Levy, if you are listening, please ignore what John is saying, and please go and get us a second striker if there's one available.
The email address for Ricky
yeah, please, anything. Contact me by mobile, 24 hours, please. Let's get the striker. That's my last words.
It's we shall watch this space. Be interesting to see what happens, and I think they've got to, haven't they? They've got to go and get that second striker, I think, just to be on the safe side. I mean, you can guarantee that if it's going to happen, it'll happen to Spurs. So let's make sure it doesn't happen and get that second striker in. Jace, your prediction for Colchester?
I'll go 3-0.
3-0 Spurs. Just some stats I picked out earlier on. They've won. Colchester only won one of the last nine games, so that all points to a Spurs defeat, surely. Last victory was in the FA Cup against Charlton in round 3. 22nd in League One, as Jace mentioned there, point off the bottom. They've only won 5 of their last 28 league games. Although
it's got draw written all over it.
It's totally got a draw written all over it. It'd be interesting to see what side we put out also in that game. Andrew, your prediction?
3-0.
3-0. So all apart from
hopefully a weak inside and 3-0.
A weak inside and 3-0. Be interesting to see what side they put out. So all apart from our most optimistic panellists going for a Spurs win, which all points towards a heavy Spurs defeat. Let's see. Back in the FA Cup, be great to get through, wouldn't it, into the next round. Lads, we've come together to the show. Really good debate tonight. Really good thoughts from both sides of each argument that we've covered tonight. The talking point and the Dele Alli and the striker debate. Some really good points there for you guys out there to get involved in on social media. So hit us up, guys, on Twitter at @e_Spurs, on Facebook e-Spurs page, all one word. And as I said at the top of the show, get involved in the competition for the 1981 replica Spurs shirt on Twitter, and also get involved in the iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. Leave a review on our page. We'd really appreciate that. That's the end of the show, guys. We'll be back next week after Colchester in the FA Cup. Hopefully another win to go with that, and a place in round 5 would be lovely. Thanks to Andrew, to Jason, to John, and to Ricky. As always, get in touch with the guys if you agree or disagree, or feel anything about what they've said on the show tonight. Have a great week, guys, and all that leaves me to say is come on you Spurs.